Welcome to our last WLRT Women's Legislative Roundtable for this General Assembly session. And we have a great lineup for you this morning, and I will kick it off to Mary Crutchfield, our legislative coordinator, and let her get us started.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our last Women's Legislative Roundtable for this session and for this year. We have two special guests this morning. One from the Commonwealth Institute for Fiscal Analysis, Phil Hernandez, and we also have Delegate Dolores McQuinn visiting us a little bit later. To start with, I am delighted to share with you that we have 8 new issue groups this year. Last year, we only had 2 regular issue groups for the League of Women Voters Virginia. And I think the best new initiative of League of Women Voters Virginia this year has been the establishment of all these new issue groups. Thank you very much to Joan Port, our first vice president, who has worked to help get these issue groups established. I am going to first call on what I hear is a very new or the newest issue group that's going to start soon. Grace Lawler, are you in the room?
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Would you like to make an announcement?
Yes, so I know most of you know me by now, but if you don't know me, I'm currently a student at JMU. I'm also on the League of Women Voters Virginia State Board, and I'm going to be chairing the new Domestic Violence Committee. We're going to be meeting every second Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. I believe the first meeting is March 11th. Yes, that's the second Thursday. I would love to see some of you guys there and would be really appreciative if you would spread the word. I'm going to put my email in the chat if anyone has any questions. Yes, go Dukes. I'm going to put my email in the chat if anyone has any questions or comments. Feel free to reach out to me there.
Thank you very much. Now I also am very excited that we have a DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Chair, Doris Bay, with us today. Are you in the room? Hello?
Good morning. Yes, I am.
All right. Good morning. It's so good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Words about what's happening with DEI in League of Women Voters Virginia?
Yes. I'm delighted to be here with you all this morning, and thank you so much for having me. DEI is very, very, very important. It is, I would say, the buzzword of the world today. So in being a member of the League, it is very, very, very important that we focus on DEI because it is one of our directives that we have. In focusing on DEI, we have a need, and that need is to educate. There is a need to educate, explore, and develop. And as we do this, we develop a better understanding and appreciation for not only others, but for ourselves as well. So we start out by looking at our history because history is very, very, very important. When we study our history, we learn more about our past in order to develop our future. So in doing this, when we learn better, we act better. DEI is a program that is really essential during these days and times because of the things that are going on in the world. We are in a repetitive stage, it appears, but we cannot forget that we as the leaguers, we set the pace. So in setting the pace, we continue to educate our members. Thus, our members will educate the persons that we work with, and then the persons in our community, and make us stand out as leaguers. As being a member of the newly initiated, I would say, issue group, we have over now about 50 members who just stepped up to the plate and say, I want to be an active part of this committee. So we have established our DEI policy using our DEI lens that was given to us from US. That is the state of Virginia DEI policy. All leagues, all state leagues and local leagues are to develop a DEI policy because it is to fit their population. We all are different and that's why we are so diverse. So we have to develop it to fit our program. In doing so, DEI is just involved in all of the different things that we do because it is democracy. And we know the league focuses on democracy. Thus, the league's policy for the state of Virginia is an organization fully committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion in principle and in practice. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are central to the organization's current and future success in engaging
Doris?
all individuals,
We're going
households.
to have to wrap up soon because we have several other speakers coming after you.
All right, I'll be very quick. I'll finish this up. In engaging individual households, communities, and policymakers in creating a more perfect democracy. We are currently doing a book study, Dr. Jenkins' book study, and I'll wrap up by saying in this age, there are numerous changes occurring to encourage persons to realize this themselves. It is very important that we pause and examine ourselves and the conditions of the world. These concerns are those of great importance that the DEI committee proposed to include in its work and the current years to come. It is a pleasure to be a part of this committee, and thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Next, we have Chris DeRosa. Are you in the room, Chris, to talk about redistricting, whatever is the latest?
I am here. Hi, everybody.
Awesome.
There wasn't a lot going on this year as compared to last year on redistricting in the General Assembly, but there were two bills. And I was surprised to find out that both of them actually were defeated. So let me just briefly tell you what happened. HB 2324 was patroned by Delegate Watts, and it was an emergency bill. I think it had an emergency clause, and it would give the commission the power to remove a commissioner for derelict of duty, some kind of behavior. It did pass the House almost overwhelmingly, 92-2, with the 4 commissioners abstaining from the vote. In the Senate, the P&E committee passed it also with a 9-1 vote. But then when it went to the Senate P&E, when it went to the floor, the vote was 19-14 with 4 abstentions. That seems like it passed, but apparently it required 32 out of the 39 votes. Julia might be able to explain it better. My thinking is it needed more like a 2/3 vote because of the emergency clause. But anyway, that was defeated. Okay, then we had HB 2082, which was a transparency bill that was brought forward by Delegate Levine. It added to the language in the bills and the Constitutional Amendment for transparency and requiring meetings and publications, including print media, etc. It did pass the House 55-41 with 4 abstentions. Again, the delegates who are on the commission abstained from voting. It went to the Senate P&E for discussion on February 16th. There was quite a bit of discussion there. The people who did speak as citizens spoke for the bill. There were concerns and questions about whether we could require SCOBA to have the Supreme Court to have open hearings during their discussions. There was questions about the number of meetings that would be required. It seemed like there was at least 1 extra meeting.
Chris?
And instead of, yes.
I'm sorry, I need to interrupt. We have some scheduled speakers, but we also have a couple delegates who have showed up that we want to try to make sure that we get to hear from everybody. So can
Okay.
we pause you and see if the delegates that are visiting would like to speak?
Certainly.
Thank you. Delegate Don Scott, would you like to speak to the group? And welcome
Sure,
this morning.
sure. Thank you, and welcome. Thank y'all for having me. I've been listening to Miss Bay and others give their reports this morning. So thank you for having me. It's still doing what we do here up here in the. I'm actually in Richmond. I represent House District 80. I'm Don Scott in Portsmouth, but I'm actually up in Richmond now because I can still kind of. I've had both my shots now, and I can and I stay masked up, and so I can meet with and I stay socially distanced. I'm warning y'all, but I can meet with people from and talk through some of this legislation and talk through some of the issues that we're having. My focus this session, as I guess my focus has been since I've been here for, wow, it feels like a long time, but only what, 13, 14 months since I got sworn in. I've been focused on criminal justice reform this year as well. We were able to pass yesterday, it should be going to the governor's desk, a probation reform bill. It is a huge bill. I had Van Jones come and testify on my behalf in the courts of justice. I don't know if Van Jones, who's one of the hosts on CNN, he was the CEO up until a few days ago of a criminal justice reform organization called Reform. He's no longer the CEO now. He's going to be on the board, and they have a new CEO. But it's a huge bill. We have 60,000 people in Virginia on probation. We have at least 6,000 people incarcerated because they had a technical violation of probation, which means that they missed a call, they didn't keep employment, or they lost a job, or they didn't well, they may have had a dirty urinalysis for marijuana, but the end of the day, over 6,000 people are in jail for having committed no new crime. And so the bill basically says, and another thing is in Virginia, the judges can put a person on probation indefinitely. So there can be literally no end. It can go the length of your sentence until you've completed that period. So what happens is, let's say you got a 10-year sentence and you had 6 years of that time suspended, and you do 4 years active. When you come out, you're on probation indefinitely. And so during that entire 6 years, you're on probation. But data shows that 2 years is about all you need from that point on. I don't know if anybody can go or well, I ain't gonna say anybody, but a lot of people in that situation, especially when we criminalize poverty, you're gonna have a lot of interaction with police. And so you end up getting violated. And then you end up going back to jail for having committed no new offense. So that's just in DOC, the 6,000. So no telling how many folks are in for jail, in jails around here, because we have like 70% of the folks in our jails are not in, have not been adjudicated yet. So we just got jails and prisons full of folks who haven't committed a crime. So anyway, so my bill bans indefinite probation. It puts a 5-year cap on probation. That's the most they could get. Or there are some sentences that are excluded from that. The more serious criminal offenses, the violent offenses, sex offenses, that's a different section of the code. So this is not affected. But you'd be surprised there are people on grand larceny who have a grand larceny charge for stealing a cell phone, and they're on probation forever. Going to work, moved on their life, still on probation. But the bill also says that if I do have a technical violation on the first offense, then the judge can't put me back in jail. So what happens is you have suspended time over your head. So the judge can't revoke and suspend that time on the first offense. So on the second offense, the most the judge could give you is 14 days. And then on a technical violation. And then the third offense, you're not getting it. The judge can do what he wants to do. I think the bill number is 2038. I'm terrible at bill numbers, y'all. I'm just terrible at them. So hope I have to look them up like everybody else. I know what my bills do. I just don't remember the numbers. But and I'm amazed when people say, yeah, that's 21. So yeah, they can remember the bill. Another bill that I had this session was, y'all know these skill games are all over the place. And what we're trying to do is in my city in Portsmouth, there are literally hundreds of these machines that are unregulated. I introduced a bill to be able to, I think they used to call it back in the day a till tap. But basically, if somebody's operating an illegal machine, then any of the local attorney, the Commonwealth attorney, the city attorney, the county attorney, anybody can go in and sue those folks and get 25. And my bill says 25,000. Senator Reeves had a bill on the other side. His bill said up to 25,000. I'm insisting on my bill, 25,000. We'll see what happens. But because a lot of these folks are participating in our communities and not paying their fair way, they're paying taxes in communities like ours that are revenue starved, landlocked. We need the revenue.
Delegate Scott, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
I can go on and on. Thank you.
No, we truly
Yeah.
appreciate
Yeah.
your time.
Uh,
If you have time, could you answer some questions in the
Sure.
chat, and that way we
Sure.
can try to stay on schedule and
Sure.
still, Mr. Hernandez, if you don't mind, if we could slip
looking in the
Vivian
chat now.
Watts into the schedule and then get right back with you.
Totally fine. I'm happy to listen to Don Scott any day.
Hey,
Thank you
hey,
so much.
hey, man, that's my buddy right there. How y'all doing? I didn't know you were here.
Yeah, good to see you.
Yeah,
I understand that we have Delegate Watts in the room. Is that true? Is Delegate?
Excuse me. Good morning.
Good morning. It's wonderful to see
well,
you.
I'm gonna sign off and let Vivian take over now. I'm gonna sign off and let Vivian
Hey,
take
Don.
over.
All right.
And right,
Don and
y'all have a great day. Thank y'all for
Thanks
having
so
me.
much.
I just want to quickly say that we are very grateful for Delegate Watts' support over the years, and she is the longest serving woman delegate in our Virginia state legislature. We are very honored to have her with us. Also, she has been extremely busy, and I understand completely why she hasn't been able to visit us earlier, being the chair of finance and also being on the Rules and Transportation Committees and Courts of Justice, of course. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mary. And I really, I don't think until this year I missed more than about one meeting in years and years and years. And I really miss the open dialogue of this. And so, but you've just explained it all, Mary, besides the fact that on the House side, the virtual schedule means that we start at 7 a.m. in 2-hour blocks that must be observed as we move along. And as I took over chair of finance committee, which on the House side is the tax writing committee, the meetings had really been all crunched in other meetings, and we didn't have the time for the consideration that I am determined to have on tax reform. We have gone 20 years without looking at the current economy, progressive issues. Gradually our tax system, state and local, has become more and more regressive. So with the rescheduling that the clerk's office worked with me on, no good deed goes unpunished, and I'm now meeting at 7 a.m. and I'm a night person, so you're up at 6 a.m. To have 3 meetings a week at 7 a.m. And that's the kind of schedule we've been having. By the same token, while I miss all the body language and little side conversations, there has been a great deal of focus and discipline that has also come with these virtual meetings. And the input we've had from the public has been the same by number at the microphone, if you will, but you miss again seeing the audience, seeing what the reaction is and the number of people who are following a particular meeting. I'll be real quick and hit just 3 highlights of what my legislative focus has been for this session, besides the tax reform issues. And there will be a JLARC study on the Virginia income tax that will start next year. I will also be working on the corporate income tax as far as our lack of conformity with the bulk of other states as far as how we define corporate liability. And the challenge is to reflect the current economy, not creating a loophole, not creating a safe tax haven, not moving people. And it's a challenge. And as long as I've been at it, one of the reasons why I enjoy all of this is that there's always something more to learn. And this is very definitely an area. And so that will also be going forward. I won't talk about the other reform, except to say that today on the floor, you will see the conference report for conformity of what is under Virginia income tax and corporate tax law to federal. And that has been quite a battle as to how we direct COVID money. Right now we do have a surplus. I won't go into the elements of that surplus, but for the most part, the surplus is a one-time. And so the compromise will be directed as much as we can towards those businesses that have actually been hurt by COVID activity in the last year, rather than just across the board. But that is always challenging in tax policy. Promises is my last thing on taxes, but back when I did 2 major studies and League of Women Voters chair in Fairfax County, I love the phrase I ran into, which was the convenience of hiding behind the skirts of selected widows and orphans. That too often our tax laws are, oh, this is just awful. Now, I just happen to be benefiting too, but you've got to, so the challenge to target is always a major problem. 2 other quick things that I want, actually 3 quick things. One, next year, by God, we're going to get a nursing home staffing requirements in Virginia. 30% higher proportion of deaths in Virginia nursing homes than nationwide, and we're one of the few states that does not have staffing standards. More money is being put into nursing homes, but the staffing, but it's more one-time. The staffing standards must be addressed next year, and I look forward to working with you all, that while the need for additional funding is real in our nursing homes, with 20,000, 2/3 of 60% of those being on Medicaid, it still must be done with accountability, and staffing is the most crucial accountability. The second thing that I want to quickly address, following on Don Scott, is that the criminal justice reform bill that I am carrying, and I believe it's already passed both houses, is to give degrees of robbery under the criminal code, where you have all kinds of definitions under every other offense against a person. When it comes down to robbery, it's been the same since 1978. One only definition of robbery, where you can get a penalty from 5 years to life. Huge difference between threatening because you're big, someone, give me your money, and actually doing serious bodily injury with a lifetime debility of the individual. So what we now have are 4 different categories, all of them within ranges of some of current sentencing, but defining that so we have far more consistency throughout the Commonwealth, and particularly far more rational sentencing at the lower end, where it has tended to be significantly higher than any degree of comparability would warrant to that at the higher end. And then finally, talk about next year again. This has to do with harassment, workplace harassment. I was very involved in this last year, sort of underneath the radar screen, where the focus was much more on outright discrimination, hire, fire, or failure to promote. Harassment is a form of discrimination under the Virginia Values Law, but it's not defined. And as I've gotten deeper and deeper into it this year, with a lot of good work on the House side, I think we got at least 80, 90% there in defining it, because the problem is at the federal EEOC, it also is not defined. It's far more by case law. It's not bright letter of the law. So it's really, to the degree that all of this should, to the greatest degree possible, should be preventative by telling employers and supervisors what their responsibility is once any kind of harassment is reported. And I insisted from the get-go last year that this not be just sexual harassment, as serious as the bulk of the cases are. It involves race, ethnicity, gender identity, etc. But the issue is to go through mediation through the Attorney General's office and investigatory look at what is alleged, the totality of the circumstances, et cetera, and then before determining any court action. And court action is the rare thing that you would end up with after you have done the kind of mediation and training and so on, but giving a strong focus. So the bill that unfortunately did not get out of the Senate committee does reflect a bright black letter of the law, case law on this issue. I will work it very hard over the next 6 months or so to get the lawyers who are concerned about this area of the law comfortable with the essential reason why we need to define harassment in Virginia code and be able to go forward with it.
Delegate Watts, thank you so much. We really appreciate your work and great seeing you again. And Mary, I'll turn it back over to you. And Mr. Hernandez, thank you so much for your generosity with your schedule to let us move you back just a smidge.
Also, I would just like to check with Delegate Dolores McQuinn. Is it all right with you that we go a little bit later? Are you able to stay until 9:15 or 9:20?
I had scheduled it for that time. Probably, yeah, until 9:20 would be fine.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Flexibility. All right. I want to introduce Phil Hernandez, who is with the Commonwealth Institute of Fiscal Analysis. He's the Senior Policy Fellow and Counsel, and he's going to speak to us about expungement-related issues. Phil, you have the floor.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mary. It's nice to be with all of you for your last legislative roundtable of the year. As Mary said, I'm with the Commonwealth Institute for Fiscal Analysis. We work on a lot of issues relating to the budget and healthcare and education, but I focus a lot on our criminal justice work. And so I want to talk to you today about expungement reform, or probably more precisely, based on the bill that's moving forward, criminal record sealing reform. And obviously, in the last couple of months, going back to the special session last year, criminal justice in general has been at the forefront. We did a lot of policing reforms in the General Assembly last year, and this year you've seen them continue to push. We're on the brink of ending the death penalty, taking a hard look at mandatory minimums. But I would submit to you also that criminal record sealing is probably, if enacted, would be one of the most significant pieces of legislation that the General Assembly has adopted on the issue of criminal justice reform. So why is this so important, and why is the General Assembly spending so much time on this? Well, we've had decades of tough on crime policies that have left about nationally 70 million people, or 1 in 3 adults, with some kind of arrest or conviction record. Here in Virginia, we're in the Commonwealth, we have about 8.5 million people. Well, 1.6 million people have some kind of record. And that number may be larger than what you might have guessed. And when you have a record, that casts a long shadow in terms of housing, in terms of employment, in terms of accessing credit. And in the employment context in particular, not only are you much less likely to find a job at all, but if you are hired, your earnings drop significantly. So there was this study that came out a few years ago that found that formerly incarcerated men lose almost $200,000 in earnings before the age of 50 relative to men who have never been incarcerated. And I will say that the impact of a criminal record is even more pronounced for women, and particularly women of color. It's almost as if they are punished twice, once for the record and twice for being a woman. So that's part of the reason why this legislation is really important as well. And I guess the last point I'll say before digging into the specifics of the bill is that our starting point is pretty terrible. Virginia notoriously has one of the worst expungement laws in the country that provides a pathway to very, very few people. So this is a really necessary reform that has been a long time in the making. So what does this bill do? Well, in a nutshell, it creates new pathways for certain kinds of offenses to be sealed, by which I mean just hidden from public view, so long as certain conditions are met. And the bill creates two universes, so to speak. There's an automatic component where people don't have to take any new action to get their records sealed. And then there's a petition-based component. And this was part of a compromise reflecting different philosophies, in a sense, between the House and the Senate. You saw the House really prioritize automatic expungement or sealing because of the barriers that can come from requiring someone to go back into court, file a petition, pay costs, get before a judge. You have to jump through a lot of hoops. And from other states that have a petition-based process, we've seen that that can leave a lot of folks behind. The Senate, I think, took a more cautious approach in their original version. I think they were concerned about being over-inclusive, especially given how different this is from current law. So this compromise bill kind of takes the best of both of those bills and blends them together. So I want to talk a little bit about those differences, but first, just generally, what will apply to all sealed records. First of all, there's no duty to disclose that you have a sealed record in the context of employment or housing. You don't have to disclose it to educational institutions, say you're applying to college, that sort of thing. And again, that's going to the collateral consequences, the stigma of having a record. The other really important provision is that old fines and fees are not a barrier to record sealing. In one of the prior versions of the bill, many of you will know this, if you've been convicted of a crime or even charged with a crime, there are usually costs that you have to pay, the court fines and fees. And one of the older versions said you have to pay all of those things off before you can get your sealing. And of course, you think about the criminalization of poverty, that leaves behind a certain group of people without means. So I was really happy to see that in this compromise bill. And the last thing here is that the bill sets in place new accuracy standards for business screening services. So in the cases where the information can be shared, maybe because it's allowed by either state law or federal law, this bill says there's an affirmative obligation on business screening services to maintain accurate records. And if they fail to do so, there are civil penalties, monetary penalties. The Attorney General of Virginia can bring a civil action to enforce the provisions of the code. So those things apply to all sealed records. So let's talk a little bit more about the automatic versus petition. Automatic sealing, this applies generally to misdemeanor charges that result in acquittal or dismissal. And on top of that, certain convictions for relatively minor offenses. So you can think about things like trespassing, petite larceny. Those things will be automatically sealed after a waiting period of 7 years, so long as that person has not been involved in another criminal offense. So that's a relatively small body of crimes that are in the automatic sealing, but it is a start. And then on the petition-based side, these are generally reserved for the more serious crimes. So certain felony charges, you have to file a petition, but also convictions for misdemeanor offenses, class 5 or 6 felonies, and certain other charges like grand larceny. You can file a petition and the court will take a look at that. There's also a waiting period, either 7 years for a misdemeanor, 10 years for a felony. You have to show some evidence of rehabilitation. But there is this process now where the court will look at specific factors and make a determination based on your individual circumstances. So that's a very broad overview. We also put out a blog just last week that sort of lays out all of this in more detail and hopefully in plain English, because I know that there are a lot of moving parts to all of this. I guess the last thing I would say is that this is on track to be implemented by 2025, assuming that it makes it all the way to the governor's desk and is signed into law. And I've heard some folks say, well, that's a long way away, and I'm feeling the consequences of my record right now. And the reason for that delay, as I understand, is that there are a lot of systems that need to be built, modernization of computer systems with the state police and with the courts, so that all these systems can talk to each other. There are certain provisions that kick in sooner, but as we think about full 100% implementation, that will be 2025. So overall, I think it's a big deal that the General Assembly is moving this forward. Major criminal justice reform legislation, and happy to be able to give you a quick overview of it this morning. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have as well.
Do we have time for one quick question?
Yes.
There seems to be a question regarding record sealing versus expungement. So with record sealing, you could have it dismissed, the question is, but still end up on the record, where only the record is sealed. You're using them a little bit interchangeably. Are there two definitions?
Yeah, they're a bit of a term of art, expungement versus criminal record sealing. Expungement really, in a true sense, means that the records are destroyed, that they're completely deleted from any database that the state maintains or that the police maintains. Record sealing means something a little bit different. It means that the records still exist, but they are really under a lock and key, and they can't come out from that lock and key unless there's some particular specific reason that they need to. For example, if, let's say you're applying for a federal job and they have to run, under federal law, a background check that considers your criminal record history, then in that case, to be consistent with federal law, then those sorts of things would be unsealed. If it were destroyed, they wouldn't be able to do that, right? So there is a little bit of distinction there. In general, this bill really only provides for record sealing. And I saw a question about the blog, and I'll put a link in here so folks can take a look at that at their leisure.
Thank you so much, Phil, and you're welcome to stay and answer any questions in the chat. But we need to move on now and welcome Delegate Dolores McQuinn. Thank you so much for being patient and flexible. Delegate Quinn is from the 70th District, and she is on several committees. She's chair of Transportation Committee, so we're hoping she will share with us some of the highlights from the being chair of the Transportation Committee. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mary, and good morning to each of you. And thank you. I want to just first of all, thank you all for your amazing work. I mean, just being always on the front line, helping us to navigate around this and just around the GA's work. And so I just want you to know how much I appreciate you. So thank you so much. And thank you for the invitation to be here this morning. And I won't hold you long. I will just give you a few highlights on some of the work that has been done and some of the things that I've been able to accomplish and actually extremely proud of this particular session. But I wanted to just leave you with this before I move on and talk about that. And I hope some of you can appreciate it, because I shared with a couple of folks that, the difference in this these virtual moments in time and going into the General Assembly, that when I went into the General Assembly every day during the week, sometimes on weekends, I didn't have to worry about what was going on necessarily in my household. And so I was able to ignore all of the dirt and all of anything that's going on, that I could put it on hold. Well, this forces me to look at the dirt and those things that I wanted to put on hold and to do the virtual meetings. And so I said, in between time, you have to go and pick up here and put back there. And so it is a big difference there. But it has been a amazing moment in time that we have all had to participate in, and somehow we're making it work. And so I thank you once again. Several bills that I was able to patron, and they were and passed both the House and the Senate at this point, and will be going to the governor's desk, one of those things have been the food, and you probably know that I've been focused on that, the produce prescription program, focusing on food insecurity and hunger currently as it is and how it is impacting us across Virginia. We have about 1 million individuals in Virginia and the Commonwealth that are struggling in terms of food insecurity and food, just having access for affordable and healthy foods. And so I was able to put that prescription bill in. The legislation really directs the Department of Social Services to develop a work group containing various stakeholders in the health and nutritional field to develop a 3-year pilot program and to begin to see who is exactly individuals who are eligible for this program and how we can make certain that they have access to quality fruit and vegetable. And we have noticed that and have learned across the country, this is occurring. And the difference in people's lives, it's being made based on them having greater access to quality fruit and vegetable. There are many, I guess, chronic illness that we are battling across this Commonwealth and in the lives of people. And so we're hoping that that could make some changes. The other bill one of the other bills, House Bill 2019, that I was able to get through the General Assembly was the administration of albuterol inhalers in schools. It is a bill that provides and require that all schools, public schools, to stock albuterol in the event of emergency for treating a student that may be experiencing asthma, an asthma attack. Asthma is a growing health issue in our Commonwealth. And the reality is, as a result of COVID, we're finding that is even a greater issue. And so we're going to have to look at that in the future. This certainly is for the pediatric population. But however, it is a serious problem. Albuterol can be a life-saving medication. And I believe we owe it to our children to ensure that they are protected from untreated asthma attack while at school, and the legislation would do just that. And I've had a personal experience because my granddaughter has asthma, and we have had some situations that really actually hospitalized her for 2 weeks. And so I know how imperative it is for us to make sure that in schools, these things are made available. Finally, and I want to get to in terms of the transportation, as a chair of the Transportation Committee, I have considered this a great opportunity to serve in an awesome capacity and to really learn a lot about the state of Virginia. When I first started serving, I had no clue where some of these places were that they were telling me, a road here, a bridge there. And so I've had wonderful opportunities to begin to learn more about places in the Commonwealth and those areas that need attention, and how we could make certain that we are developing programmatically those things that will reach in the deepest part of our Commonwealth, urban communities, suburban communities, but everyone will have access. So there was a joint resolution, transit equity and modernization study that I was able to get through. The resolution authorizes the Department of Rails and Public Transportation to study transit equity and to modernize the transportation system in this Commonwealth. And so it also directs the DRPT to study methods and ways that we could modernize our transportation system. Not only will it cover the environmental challenges that we are faced with, but also the health impact. And so hopefully when it's all said and done, we will find ourselves moving toward a cleaner, safer, and more economically efficient transit system while improving accessibility and affordability for all of our communities. And so that has been one that I am, again, very proud of and was able to get support. Finally, there was a joint resolution 605 that is the COVID-19 Remembrance Day. This resolution would designate March the 14th, 2021, and annually going forward as Victims of COVID-19 Remembrance Day. And the reason I put this bill in because many of you, if you've been affected, and all of us have been affected, I don't know anyone that doesn't know someone who has succumbed to this disease, this virus, as well as may have left people disabled with other health issues. But this will give us an opportunity as a Commonwealth to come together and remember those who have been lost, to remember those whose hands we were unable to hold, to remember those who had a graveside funeral rather than a celebration of their life. This will help to address that, and it will be on, again, stay tuned for March the 14th, because that will be the first day that we would commemorate this very daunting issue that affected the Commonwealth and our nation. Many of you know, as day before yesterday, it topped to over 500,000 deaths in this country, and there have been over 7,000 in the state of Virginia. So establishing the Victim of COVID-19 Remembrance Day is a way, again, we can honor the memory of those who have lost their lives to this deadly virus. So anyway, that in a nutshell are some of the highlights. Again, thank you for this opportunity in terms of allowing me to share with you.
Thank you so much, Joan. We do have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions in the chat.
Okay.
We just got thank you, thank you, thank you. And multitasking is what women do. So
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Delegate Quinn.
Thank you. And I want to say good morning, especially to Doris and Ernie. I certainly know them, been knowing them for, well, many of you, I shouldn't start calling names because it gets me in trouble. But thank you again. I love you guys and appreciate your work and your contributions. I really do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, have a great day.
You too. Well, now I'm going to call Chris back, who was interrupted talking about redistricting. And I'm going to ask all issue leaders, please understand that sometimes our schedule gets completely rearranged when we have surprise legislators come visit. So we're going to have to cut the time for each of the issue leaders to 1 minute or less. Chris, are you still there?
Yes, I am, and I was almost done. So HB 2324, the removal of a commissioner, was defeated. The 2082 about transparency was passed by indefinitely in the Senate P&E committee. So no new bills were passed in the General Assembly this year. I'll just let you know that the commission did have 1 meeting in January. I checked this morning, they still have not scheduled their next meeting. Some of us anticipate they'll have at least 1 meeting in March after the General Assembly adjourns. I'll put in the box the website where you can check on their schedule and submit comments. It's basically redistricting.dls.virginia.gov.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris. And please feel free to add anything to the chat. Next, I would like to invite Janet Boyd, our Director of Voter Services, and she is going to give us an update on campaign finance.
Hi, I can make this real quick because unfortunately, almost everything that we tried to get through or hoping to get through failed, which is typical. We are sort of in a stasis situation with regard to campaign finance reform, but with one exception, HJ 526 is a study bill, and we were able to get that through both the House and the Senate. And so that will be the focus of the issue group, the campaign finance reform issue group going forward. So I welcome participation. This is a great opportunity for us to perhaps get some input into the process. And so just let me know if you have any questions. Thank you so much, Mary.
Thank you. Is Ruth Hoffman in the room? She is our advisor on gun violence prevention. Ruth Hoffman?
She was, maybe she had to leave. She was here earlier.
All right. Well, then we'll move on. Pam Berg, who is leader of our voter access group.
Mary, Ruth just unmuted,
Oh, okay.
but Ruth, I don't think we can hear you. I can see you're not muted. Why don't, okay, yeah, go ahead and go to Pam and we can try to come back to Ruth.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Pam Berg. I'm the co-chair along with Don Craig of the Voter Access and Voter Services Issue Group. I'm going to be really super fast and just focus on the key highlights. Many of them were COVID related. So the witness requirement for absentee ballots is sort of a half win, but there's still more work being done. The drop boxes and ballot curing are in conference, so they're still alive. Universal right to vote, not exactly what we wanted, but it's in conference. So it's still working. Pre-clearance is still alive, and National Popular Vote is out this year, so come back next year. And then one of the successes we had, the broadband developments, there's a couple bills on that. It's positive results, mostly pilot programs made permanent or extended. So we've had a pretty good year, but we're still going. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Pam. I love your new hair color.
It's nonpartisan.
Is Ruth with us now? Is Ruth Hoffman with us?
She is, but she still doesn't have audio.
All right. Well, then can we move on to Lisa Kotine Gerchik, who's the leader of our election security group? Lisa, are
Yes,
you?
good morning. Thanks, Mary. Let me be pretty quick here. HB 2081, Levine's bill passed. No firearms are permitted within 40 feet at any polling place. So that's a really great thing. SB 1331, it's not really election security, but it's a bill that came out of a lawsuit last year to provide for a software tool for visually impaired and voters with print disabilities to enable them to vote from home, receiving a ballot, downloading it online, and voting it at home and then sending it back. HB 1888, Van Valkenburg's omnibus bill. The only part I would mention or plan to mention, because it's really part of voter access, the Dropbox and the ballot curing are part of that bill. But also it does require that absentee ballots begin to be pre-processed 7 days before election day. And this is to speed it up because there was so much concern about the late announcement of absentee ballots. Even though there was much notice of this, people still didn't know whether they could trust the results because results changed after the closing of the polls and after the live voting, the in-person voting on election day. Curbside voting has been made a lot more standard and clearer in HB 1921. HB 1810 does require, if you recall, the online voter registration system failed the last day of voter registration because of a cut fiber optic cable. And the new bill says that automatically there would be an extension of time if there's a failure of the online voter registration system equal to the duration of the failure. And that way you don't need to go to court and get the governor to do it for you. That's it.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you for all your great testimony. You were wonderful. Is Alice Toussaint in the room?
I
Leader
am.
of Affordable Housing Group. Welcome, Alice.
Hi, thank you for having me. So in affordable housing, just real quickly, the two things that were actually very good are related to the budget items. So the Housing Trust Fund, it looks like, even though they still haven't completed it yet, both the Senate and the House will come up with approximately 100 million over the biennium, so that's great. And then the new state opportunity tax credit program was passed. And while it doesn't include a lot of money, it's a beginning, so that's really good. And then there were some good tenant and homeowner protection bills that were passed, including one that stops illegal evictions, another one that says that a landlord can't evict someone if he or she accepts all of the money that was owed, which is kind of a no-brainer to me, but that was happening. And then the extended pay or quit from 5 days to 14 days, along with a payment plan that occurred during the special session because of the pandemic, but had a sunset of this coming July. They wanted to get rid of that sunset altogether, but it was just extended for another year, which is not a bad thing. And in one last thing, in terms of homeowner protection, there's now, if your house is being foreclosed on, you have to be given a 60-day notice. It used to be that there was barely any notice given at all. So that's a good thing. So I'm encouraging everybody to join the Affordable Housing Issues Group if you want to. We have an open door, so just check the website out. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Alice. Next, we have a new group, the Child Care Group. Beth Carriel, who's a member of the Child Care Group, are you here?
Hey, I wrote mine out and it's 2 minutes if I read it. Should I make it shorter than that?
Yes, 1 minute.
Okay. Okay, then good news is that House bill, which was introduced by Speaker of the House Eileen Filler-Corn, House Bill 2206 did pass. That was this is an emergency bill with an emergency clause allowing for people to have higher incomes and still be eligible for subsidies. The second one is a longer term response to the child care problems, and that was Senator McClellan's Senate Bill 1316. This does a couple things, but my time is short, so I'll just say it establishes a pilot program, which will then be evaluated, and the data from the pilot program will be used for future planning for working to improve childcare in Virginia. And lastly, sadly, the Children's Cabinet was not funded this year. And Delegate Paul Krizik and Senator Jennifer McClellan had introduced a budget amendment to fund the Children's Cabinet. This is unfortunate because the Children's Cabinet was a very useful method to support interagency collaboration and prioritize children's issues, including early childhood care and education. So that's it. There's good news and not so good news.
Thank you so much. Now, do we have Ruth Hoffman?
Hey, we'll try it one more time. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So at the beginning of the session, there were 5 bill issues that we were tracking and supporting. And the good news is that there's a high level of certainty that 4 of the 5 will go to the governor's desk. We know for sure that 3 are, so this is great news. The 3 that are going to the governor's desk, one intersects with domestic violence and guns, and it was the most important to me, I must say. I'll circle back with a little bit on that. The second was guns at polling places, to prohibit guns at polling places. At one point, we were worried they were going to exempt concealed carry permit holders, but it stayed intact. So concealed permit holders cannot carry their guns into the polling places. The third is extending 2 more days. So there'll be 5 days to complete a background check before a sale will proceed. Later today, we'll know if ghost guns are advancing. It's up for its second reading in the Senate. And these are your do it at home assembly of ghost gun parts, and you assemble a gun. And they are not licensed at the federal level. So it's very important to pass legislation to prohibit those. And then the fifth is going to a conference to work out the details between the House and the Senate, and it is prohibiting guns on the Capitol Square and in state government buildings. There's a little bit differences in both the House and the Senate, and so they'll work that out in the conference. It has to do with, I think, some of the adjacent streets around the Capitol Square. So back to domestic violence and guns. We all know the history of violence is the single largest predictor of future gun violence. So it's so important to get this right with domestic violence. It was narrowed as it worked its way through the House and the Senate. But it's still progress, and we will take it. It will align state law with federal law, so we're able to enforce it through the state law enforcement, and it will prohibit possession, purchase, and transfer of guns by those who are convicted of violent misdemeanors. And it will address those who are spouses, those who share a child together. And unfortunately, one of the compromises is that after 3 years, they will get their guns back. So that was one piece we would have rather not been incorporated, but we'll still take the progress. So that's all for here. Thank you so much. And we testified on 4 of the 5.
Thank you so much, Ruth, for all your good work on this issue. And I was going to ask Andrian Constas, who is our Director of Membership, if she could say a quick word about membership.
Hi, yes. Let me just, I'm going to do a quick share my screen. And I'd like to remind everybody that if you are a member to please renew. And sorry, it might take a while. And as well as if you are new to the league and you've just been joining us here on our Wednesday legislative roundtable meetings, please go ahead and take a look at our Join Us page. I'm going to insert a couple links into the chat box so that you can go ahead and you can join us at the state level, or if you have a local league in your area, please go ahead and join the local league and you'll still become a member of the state league as well as the National League of Women Voters. And then if you have any questions in regards to there's no league in your area, we're working hard to get more local leagues or leagues at large units established throughout the state. So please go ahead and fill out a survey for that. And if you're all set, you've renewed your membership and you're all good, please don't forget to take our membership survey. This will help us narrow down which issue groups that you might be interested in following up on, as well as if you have any other ideas for social events that we can help bring to our membership. I encourage you to fill that out, and we'll work hard to respond to those submissions. I'm going to stop sharing now. But thank you again, and thank you all for all the information you've shared today. It's been really helpful.
Thank you, Andrian. And thank you, everybody. Deb Wake, do you want to say the last word here before we?
I would. Thank you, Mary. As you can see, Andrian is very talented graphically too. She does our Instagram. I would remind you to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can find those links on our webpage as well. Reminder that now, what do you do now with your Wednesday mornings? Well, figure out which issue group that you're going to join and get involved, because the league never sleeps. And there are bills that we need to work on. There's program planning. Also put in a plug for convention. That's May 22nd and 23rd. There will be a link coming out soon to sign up for that. And thank you all so much for all that you do. The League is making a difference in Virginia. Have a good one.
Thank you, Deb, and thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.